Had to be done. Much better. What's up, Bodyweight Warriors? Welcome back to another episode, I guess, of the Bodyweight Bulk. As you saw from the start of this episode, we hit 90 kilos, up 1 kilo out of the 3 that was planned, or about a month in when I recorded that bit. It's a couple of days later now. So a little bit behind, but overall, not doing too bad. So I'm actually in London today. We've just been teaching a workshop with myself and Ulrich this past weekend, which went really, really well. So thank you everyone who did turn up. I think it was a good workshop. Everyone had a good time. Just a good set of people, as always. You know, it seems to attract a like-minded sort of individual to, you know, doing handstands, bodyweight training, all of that sort of good stuff. Does mean that food has been, to be honest with you, actually better than anything, because it's just easy to order things. There's been a lot of sushi consumed, which is a great bulk food, but I'm just going to cook up something quickly now, and I'll show you what breakfast is. Right, so the usual mountain of food in here. We've got 350 grams of ground beef. Really nice, easy travel one. Certainly I adhere mainly roughly to the vertical diet as kind of my rough eating. Ground beef, rice, that's kind of essentially the basics there. I don't have any rice, don't have any carbs, but in here I've got some halloumi, extra fat, protein, makes everything taste better. I've got some beetroot for the nitrates, and also just a little bit of a carb sauce, something that's kind of easy to get hands on. It's got like that kind of vinegary sort of kick to it. A couple of eggs for, you know, choline and all the good stuff that's in eggs. And the secret ingredient is that chipotle paste, something that I usually travel with if I'm traveling in the UK, just because I can kind of add it to anything and it will taste pretty reasonable, pretty good. So that's that. And then on the side, I've had some raspberries and I've got some Brazil nuts. So again, extra calories. And I think for dessert, I saw this. One of the things that you only ever find in shops in London, but they're basically Reese's Pieces, but less bad. I don't think I could call them healthy, but those as well as as a treat. So if we go to the calories, I've just roughly chucked this in. This is about 120 grams of protein, 100 grams of fat, 50 grams of carbs. So total calories of about 1,600, which is pretty reasonable. You may say excessive. I think the protein stuff's been bumped up by the fact that I've got halloumi in there and things, and also like the nuts and some other small bits and pieces, which I wouldn't really count as like a primary protein source. I was thinking more like how much meat I'm having. But yeah, anyway, decent calories. I'm low on the carbs, so I kind of went harder on the fat, hence the peanut butter cups. Other than that, bulk is going somewhat well. Kind of a simple-ish travel sort of meal, 1 pan, chuck it in, everything's put together, just grind it down, we're good. So we're at my local crackdown, aka the new property that I'm working on, something that I kind of wanted to share. I'm gonna make probably a whole video on, because I want to make that into a series itself. I know it doesn't really fit with the stuff that's on this channel, but it's something I wanted to share, and a lot of you guys have said that you're interested. So, you know, I'd love to document it myself, also just to be able to look back on. But in today's video, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit, as we had at the update at the beginning of the vlog, about weight gain. It's going well, a little bit more of the eating sort of side of things. I wanted to touch on briefly a little bit about that meal, because I know some people think that's a bit overkill on the protein side of things. And I also want to talk to you a little bit about training for skills and also mass gain at the same time. So I've got a few tips that I'm kind of implementing, and now seems like a good time to share, because that was kind of the most common question on the last video. So let's cut to the chase. Terrible dad jokes coming out. I want to quickly address the kind of meat one, because I want to do, I think everyone's been asking for a nutrition video, so I want to talk more about that. Very briefly, meat isn't really just about a source of protein and some fat. On a macronutrient level, yes, that's what it provides. But essentially, you're looking at an extremely bioavailable source of that, as well as some other micronutrients and minerals. We got to think about potassium, zinc, copper, manganese. We've got to think about the B vitamins, folate, carnitine, choline, and creatine. There's so many other things in not only beef, but meat in general, especially more so than like chicken breast, not really so much, but certainly if we're looking at beef, whole cuts, things like beef liver as well, again, can't understate how good that nutrition is. So for me personally, eating meat is more than just protein. I shoot for around 200 to 240 grams of protein a day. That's on that 2 to 2.2 grams per kilo. So, you know, it's maybe on the upper end of what's been shown to be optimal for muscle mass, and then maybe slightly beyond. But again, I'm not eating it for that reason. That there's more than that, basically. Anyway, enough of that for this episode. We're gonna go into that in the next one in more detail. If you have any comments that you wanna join in, maybe I'll read some of them out, or I'll talk through some of those points in that video, leave them down below. But other than that, let's talk about skills and mass gain training and some thoughts on that for bodyweight athletes.
So, skills training straight. By the way, this is a shower.
I don't understand this. So let's talk about training for both skills and mass gain at the same time, because ultimately this comes down to that important thing in bodyweight training, which is the strength to weight ratio. Now, I've talked about this in several videos. I would recommend, if you are particularly interested in this, checking out the video I did on why gymnasts are so ridiculously strong. And I also have an old video where I talked about how I got the one arm chin up by dropping some weight. Essentially, being lighter is useful. It makes life easier, but to a certain degree. We can get strong without building muscle mass, but building muscle mass does assist in our strength. The size of a muscle, a bigger muscle, is also going to be a stronger muscle. Bulking, gaining muscle mass, gaining weight can actually aid us with that long-term strength goal. Not to mention, just eating sufficient calories, eating in a surplus, is going to lead to better recovery and better progress with your training. That's actually probably one of the things that I've noticed. My progress over the past 6 weeks has been pretty damn consistent and pretty good in comparison maybe to the prior, where I was eating just about enough calories. But I think the thing that is important to consider is that when we're trying to build muscle, and skills is still the focus of what we want to do, we want to contextualize that muscle mass. We want to build muscle in a way that is relevant to what we want to achieve. That is why I've pretty much shared all of the workouts that I'm doing at the moment in one of the previous videos. And essentially, I've still been doing my normal-ish training. I might be having a little bit more focus on some higher rep stuff, or I'm certainly adding in a little bit more volume on body parts with some accessory movements such as dumbbell flies or bicep curls, etc. That's kind of the bodybuilding, the hypertrophy stuff. But really the mainstay, the bulk of my training is still skills focused. I'm doing handstand push-ups and planche holds. I'm doing press to handstand on my pull day. So I've still got a significant amount of my training volume, maybe half of it, is still really focused around building skills. So that's quite a simple way of splitting it up. Kind of what we talked about in the last episode was how do we train for mass gain, and in there I talked about the importance of including a variety of rep schemes and how I would generally start with strength stuff, do hypertrophy stuff at the end. We can apply that same principle here. We do our skills exercises and then we do some supporting hypertrophy work. One thing though to consider is, if mass gain is your priority, is the difference between the effects that will have on mass gain between straight arm and bent arm strength. Ultimately, bent arm strength is going to elicit more hypertrophy response than straight arm. It's just the nature of the training. So this is why things like handstand push-ups, one arm chin-ups are actually pretty good exercises for building both muscle mass and also strength. But maybe things like the planche and front lever aren't going to be as favorable. What we could do instead is we can perform bent arm versions of those movements as a way of training both muscle mass and also then our skills. For example, we might set up a workout in a way that maybe we start off with our strength moves, we do some planche presses, we do some front lever pulls, something like that. And then we support this work focused on mass gain, but still working towards our skills by doing maybe some planche push-ups or some front lever rows as our accessory movement in a higher rep range, in something that is going to be more focused towards that mass gain element, pushing a little bit more to failure, focusing on time under tension, focusing on that muscle contraction. It's a nice simple way of training both at the same time. So really where, for example, this isn't optimal is in relation to the weighted leg training that I'm doing. Ultimately, having more weight on your legs isn't going to help skills such as the planche and the front lever. But do we really want to be walking around with chicken legs? Do we want the benefits of training that lower body as well? Personally, for me, I've got the goal in 2022 to get a 2 times bodyweight squat. I'm not going to do that with skinny legs. That being said, if you really just care about getting a planche or a front lever, handstand push-up is probably not going to serve you. You're better off looking a little bit out of proportion and just getting a jacked upper body. So I think really the whole strength to weight ratio thing is, it really kind of depends on the context. I'm pretty heavy myself anyway, but for me to gain an extra couple of kilos, I think arguably the difference in how visibly I will look should be hopefully good. And the detriment to my strength gain, I'm hoping I'm going to put some like decent strength gains. I certainly have made some decent strength gains in terms of total number of handstand push-ups and the amount of reps I'm doing per set. Like that's all still gone up whilst I've been gaining weight. So I think really it comes down to more of a personal level. You've got to then track your progress in your skills alongside maybe your bulking and see, you know, are these things going up still? Are these things still moving in the right direction? And this also comes down to how you're bulking. Are you going absolutely ham, eating as much as you can and gaining a lot of fat with it? Obviously that's not going to be as useful as just trying to kind of lean bulk, which is essentially what I'm going to try and do. I'm not trying to gain a bunch of body fat. I'm hopefully just going to be putting on a little bit more lean tissue. That's obviously going to serve you better than basically having an extra weight vest added to you.
So yeah, that's kind of my my thoughts on muscle mass. The last one I really have is thinking of this as a long-term thing, right? I've been training, bodyweight training now for about 8 years. Maybe a little bit less, but on and off, it's been pretty consistent, pretty focused around that, minus some injuries here and there. I've never, up until this point, consciously made an effort to gain muscle mass. I've just eaten well and I've trained hard, and ultimately that's kind of where I would sit on things. For most people, yeah, sure, we might want to look good, we might want to make an effort to gain some muscle mass, but ultimately it should be a byproduct of good training. If we train to do things such as the handstand push-up, front lever, pull-ups, all this sort of stuff, the physique's going to be a byproduct of that training and good nutrition over a long period of time. I'm certainly not expecting massive things to happen over this 3-month bulk. I'm expecting to see a bit of visual change, but ultimately that's going to be built off lots of years of hard work as well. I didn't exactly start from zero and end up in 3 months at a reasonable physique. It's been the prior 6-7 years of consistent work. But that's kind of, yeah, my final thoughts on this one, with probably the most ridiculous shot so far, which is on the roof. I'd like to pass one off to you though. Do you have any thoughts on the relationship between gaining muscle and skills? How maybe do you go about setting up your training for this? Obviously, there's a lot of guys out there who are jacked and really strong and good at skills at the same time. People like Fitness FAQs, Dan Vandal, you know, calisthenic movements. Plenty of people out there can do it. It's nothing revolutionary, but something to consider. But as always, I would like to pass this one on to you. As I said, join the conversation, leave me some comments about the nutrition stuff that I mentioned earlier, and also join in, is there a particular way that you like to set up your training for strength and also gaining muscle mass? Other than that, you can hit that thumbs up button if you want to support the channel. Right next to it is also that subscribe button if you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior Tribe. But that's basically it for this week's video. I'm going to go rip some stuff off some walls, release some stress and tension. Other than that, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a strong week and